And before this video begins, I'd like to give a special shout out to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez. One of the most ambitious episodes of Doctor Who Series 7B is the Rings of Akhaten, new companion Clara Oswald's first journey to an alien world. This episode was meant to be a bit of a departure from the norm, since the show had started to trend towards new companions getting stuck somewhere less than ideal, despite the Doctor promising all the wonders and glamour of the universe. Therefore, the Rings of Akhaten was born, intending to make a glorious first impression, and also explore the backstory of the mysterious Clara Oswald, whose very existence is the key story arc of Series 7B. The Rings of Akhaten sees the Doctor take his new companion to the titular location, where they end up facing off against a parasitic god, along with a vampire and a cult. So basically, your average Saturday night then. When it comes to the polarising Series 7B, the Rings of Akhaten often stands out as one of the most unpopular. But why? What's so bad about this episode? And is it actually a lot better than most people claim? Well, grab a random leaf and hop in a Flash Gordon speeder bike, because it's time to take a deep dive into the Rings of Akhaten.
That's what I'll do. I will tell you a story.
Doctor Who is a vast and limitless piece of fiction. Not only does it have the entire universe to explore, but it also has all of time itself as a playground. And even on top of that, you have other universes and dimensions. However, a common criticism of the show is how small things can sometimes feel, since the low budget has always led to limited sets representing entire planets. You basically had to rely on a lot of suspension of disbelief, since you would be given 4 beige walls, a couple of computers, some people wearing vinyl, and you're then expected to believe it's the ancient mythical planet Glublan 4. But over the years, as the budget increased and the demands of the viewers increased, the show had to deliver more and more striking visuals to properly show these supposedly stunning alien worlds. The Rings of Akhaten is one of the biggest examples of this. The production team wanted to do a big location piece to make the audience really feel like they're out in the universe. It's meant to truly show all the wonders the Doctor and the concept of the program itself promise. Right from the beginning, Clara is almost overwhelmed with the choice of where to go and what to see. It's like the Doctor said in the God Complex, offering someone all of time and space is like offering a child a suitcase full of sweets. It's irresistible, but you have no idea where to start. However, the Doctor settles on the perfect place to begin, the beautiful, surreal Rings of Akhaten. I absolutely adore this visual and Clara's awestruck reaction to it. The production team set out with the intent to show the best alien planet in Doctor Who, and they managed to perfectly achieve this by cheating a little bit and using the rings of the planet instead. I'm personally a sucker for asteroid civilizations, so obviously I'm a little bit biased. But the way it's realised on screen is truly magnificent. It genuinely looks like something new, unlike previous alien worlds in the modern era that still felt too grounded in familiarity. By shifting the focus away from the actual planet as a setting, everything feels so much more alien and distinct, so it's really well handled. The setting even looks good up close, with the Doctor and Clara arriving in the middle of a colourful, busy market. Millennium Effects Neil Gorton was inspired by the iconic Star Wars cantina scene, where Luke and Obi-Wan enter the Mos Eisley cantina and see all sorts of wild, eye-catching aliens.
He doesn't like you.
I'm sorry.
I don't like you either.
Gorton had quietly been making different creature molds in his spare time, just in case they could be used in the future, and his work pays dividends here, because there are around 50 or 60 prosthetic creatures new and old. It's so incredibly alien and unique, reminding you of just how big and varied the Doctor Who universe is. This market is just a tiny slice of that, but everything is so distinct and creative. There's a real energy and life to the scene that wouldn't work without Gorton's work. Everything feels alive, so in a single scene, it achieves what so many Doctor Who stories have failed to do due to their limited budgets. It's the kind of thing we only ever hear the Doctor talking about, but now we actually get to see it, and it definitely doesn't disappoint. Tianima perfectly matches that cantina scene in scope and variety, expertly crafting this living and breathing world for our characters to become immersed in. The world building of the episode is excellent, introducing us to 7 planets all believing life in the universe began on the planet Akhaten, which they worship as a god and celebrate with a festival of offerings. Obviously this all treads dangerously close to Planet Zog territory, but it works well here to expand the scope and establish a whole faith system for these aliens. Having these golden temples and traditions enriches the story and lends a strong backdrop to the narrative, making the setting feel rich with history and lived in, rather than it just being a pretty sight.
I forget how much I like it here. We should come here more often.
You've been here before?
Yes.
After the Doctor absent-mindedly leaves Clara behind, she bumps into a little girl on the run. I think this adds a good level of independence to Clara, giving her something to do on her own and using her natural curiosity as a plot point. I know there's some similarities to Amy following the girl and the beast below, but Clara befriending and looking after the Queen of Years really helps add to her characterization. Clara is on an alien world after taking a ride in an impossible blue box with a man she hardly knows. She's still adapting to the culture shock and is completely out of place herself, but she immediately pushes all of that aside to prioritise this scared little girl trying to hide from creepy monsters stalking her wherever she goes. Yeah, those things are pretty close to nightmare fuel, I can't lie. But it's just like I was saying in the Bells of St. John. Clara is a very sympathetic and selfless character, never putting herself above those in need. It's what kept her with the Maitland family, and it's now what influences her decision to go out of her way to look after the Queen of Years.
I just saw a little girl who looked like she needed help.
Really?
Really.
It's the perfect decision to pair Clara, a nanny, with a young child character like this. It's literally her job, so it fits in with her characterization incredibly well. They have a lot of great interactions, Clara adopting this almost motherly role to look after her and inspire her with words of wisdom. Mary is hiding from her responsibilities as the Queen of Years, the chronicle of her people's history, knowing everything there is to know and needing to sing a song or something. There's something so normal about this fear. Obviously it gets more complicated later on, but in this scene it's so simple and relatable. When we're a kid, everything is scary. We always overthink the consequences of getting something wrong or making a mistake. Jenna Coleman does a wonderful job as Clara recalls how safe she felt with her own mother. The scene feels so genuine and inspiring, instilling such confidence in this girl and making sure she's no longer scared of getting it wrong. It's scenes like these that make me annoyed when people say Clara has no character in Series 7B, because she clearly does. She's a very optimistic and inspiring person, wanting to help out anyone around her no matter what it takes. She's one of the most caring companions in the show's history, and I think the nature of her supportive, parental role in the episode is lost on a lot of people who simply aren't the target demographic. Writer Neil Cross encountered a lot of criticism over the episode, but a lot of children wrote to him about their experiences with bullying and how this episode inspired them, with one girl even telling him it changed her mind about suicide. And that's what Doctor Who is meant to be. Hope, optimism, inspiring young audiences around the world by giving them strong role models and scenes like these to reassure them and allow them to see themselves in characters like Mary. Her relationship with Clara is played so sincerely and genuinely that it has a wide-reaching impact on the audience themselves. The time has now come for Mary's big song, and I know what you're all thinking. You're sitting there gleefully rubbing your hands waiting for Mr. Anti-Musicals Harbo Wholmes to absolutely go in on this scene and this song. But I'm afraid I must disappoint you because I actually really do love the long song. It builds up so well with an excellent duet leading into the whole crowd joining in. It's a really beautiful scene, creating such an emotional sense of unity. Much like all the aliens and the setting, it feels larger than life, but it also feels deeply real and grounded. This is what all these aliens believe in. This old god and a lullaby to keep him asleep. Their gifts helping to feed their creator. It's a powerful reminder of the togetherness of faith, how it brings everyone together and gives them a purpose, something to believe in. It's a lovely scene. But just as the long song is starting up, something seemingly goes wrong, everything descending into chaos. This is Doctor Who after all, not some slice of life anime. I do appreciate how the episode lulls you into this false sense of security with no real danger or plot until it pulls the rug out from under you like this. It's such a sudden and harsh reality check, and it turns the episode on its head, injecting a lot of energy and intensity into the narrative, since it's now up to the Doctor and Clara to rescue Mary. Sure, the speeder bike chase looks pretty weird and low budget, but it works well for what it is. It also says a lot about Clara for using her mother's ring to rent the bike to begin with. As the beginning showed, she lost her mum when she was just 16 years old, so this ring really does mean a lot to her. One of the last things Clara has to remember her by. To willingly give away this ring shows just how sympathetic Clara is as a character, once again prioritising the safety of the vulnerable above all else, no matter what it takes. Mary is brought to the big, golden, floating temple to come face to face with a mysterious grandfather, a creepy, soul-eating vampire mummy. And no, not that kind of vampire mummy. I do like the twist that this is actually what's meant to happen. The old god is meant to wake up and feast on the pure soul of the Queen of Years and all the stories she has memorised. It's actually pretty dark when you think about it, this civilization sacrificing a child every 1,000 years to placate an evil, soul-hungry god. This cycle has been going on for millions of years without end, so many children killed, so it's just a little bit messed up. I also like the Doctor's speech about how unique Mary is, because she's made up of a specific arrangement of atoms and stardust from the death of a star millions or billions of light years away, so there could never be another Mary. Obviously this speech is very inspiring on its own, and highlights how unique and special each human existence is, but it also reminds you of how truly bizarre and impossible it is for there to have been two other Clara Oswalds. One in the past, one in the present, and one in the future. All pretty much identical, which is fundamentally impossible, even if you do take into account there being similar cases of identical characters like Gwen and Gwyneth, or Caecilius and Frobisher. At least those had different names and completely different personalities to differentiate them, unlike Clara, who has managed to retain the Oswald surname and the same personality throughout her different lifetimes.
Hello.
Clara Oswin Oswald.
Just Clara Oswald. What was that middle one?
However, despite the Doctor and Clara convincing Mary to not sacrifice herself to a giant vampire god, the Vigil arrive and force her to anyway, creating a real hopeless feeling. It reminds you of the determination of the protagonist. No matter how many barriers and obstacles are set up against them, they'll always smash them down and keep fighting for what they believe in. Like the Doctor says, there's always another way. Neither he nor Clara will rest until they have averted this crisis, and it creates a really strong crescendo, the Doctor holding the monsters off for Clara and Mary to escape. It's an exciting scene, but it's far from being all over. Yes, it turns out the Doctor was wrong and there is actually an old god, which is the entire planet itself. Slight tactical error there. Even though the comical face is a bit goofy, I do love how the characters react to this reveal. They're absolutely terrified and awestruck by the sheer size of their adversity, needing to fight a literal planet itself with nothing but a sonic screwdriver and a speeder bike.
It's really big.
I've seen bigger.
Really?
Are you joking? It's massive.
They're joking around, but only because of how intimidated they are. It's not like they're not taking the threat seriously, more that they feel absolutely dwarfed and helpless in the face of such a monster, so they're trying to mask their sheer terror with some levity. Writer Neil Cross was inspired by the cosmic horror of H.P. Lovecraft, wanting a monster that becomes so impossible and alien it borders on the supernatural, which is in effect easily captured by Akhaten. It's a threat unlike any other. Obviously there are some similarities to the Sun in 42, but Akhaten is so much more dangerous. It can leave its position in the star system and roam across the stars, devouring other planets as revenge. There's just something so deeply disturbing about how sentient it is, so it feels like a truly titanic villain to oppose. Knowing the threat he's now up against, the Doctor sends Clara away so she can keep protecting Mary and save herself. It's very in character for him to do this, sending everyone away to buy them some time to survive whilst he sacrifices his own life. And what follows is one of the best, albeit overrated speeches in Doctor Who history. To the incredible backdrop of the long song, the Doctor uses the power of words to fight Akhaten, capitalising on the togetherness and sentimentality of the festival. He's inspired by their beliefs and realises the best way to fight back is to use his own memories. Throughout the episode, Clara has brought up his age and lack of objects with meaning, so I think that loose plot thread is paid off well here, the Doctor deciding to use his thousands of years of life as the ultimate buffet for Akhaten. He has seen so much, experienced so many emotions, and lost everything over and over again. It's such a raw and powerful speech, the Doctor basically showing just how much his age has affected him, and almost having this cathartic release of all his pain and a lifetime of sorrow. The Doctor being able to weaponize his own guilt and anguish makes him one of the most dangerous entities in the universe at this point, because of how much ammo he has. And the best part is that Clara can hear all of this unfold, so she learns all these things about him, finding out about the loss of the Time Lords and how deeply traumatized and ancient the Doctor really is, despite his fun and youthful mask. It's essentially two ancient gods colliding in a spectacular climax, the age and experience of the Doctor overwhelming Akhaten. But it isn't enough. The old god still isn't beaten. A lot of people find this very unsatisfying, but it's actually perfect. Originally the Doctor would have succeeded, but showrunner Stephen Moffat stepped in to point out to Cross that the Doctor had already given big speeches like this, so the actual solution was handed over to Clara to help further establish her as a significant companion. I know a lot of people hate the whole power of Leaf aspect of the episode, but as someone incredibly sentimental myself, I believe it adds a real emotional core to the narrative. The Leaf was singled out as a mystery in the Bells of St. John, so it felt important right from the get-go, and this episode continues that, establishing its status as the so-called most important leaf in human history. This genuinely works within the story, because of the emphasis on sentimentality and emotional connections. As an item, it means a lot to Clara and her parents, this symbol of the beginning of their relationship. It's the kind of butterfly effect that goes unnoticed in our everyday lives. Everything has an unlikely chain of events that leads you to specific moments in time, like meeting your partner. It works perfectly within the theme of the episode because it's sentimental. Having Clara use the leaf is the ideal thematic climax for an episode all about sentimentality. Obviously the Doctor has all those stories and experiences to throw at Akhaten, but they lack the sentimentality we've seen focused on throughout the episode. But then that's where the leaf comes in. The leaf carries so much meaning and emotion despite seemingly being a normal object. People always harp on about it being stupid, but they're completely missing the point. It isn't about the leaf itself. It's about what it means to Clara as a person. This is a representation of her mother, her father, her entire life. It's a singular object that made everything she has ever experienced possible. It's special to her, and that's why it's so important. The power comes from her conviction and the strength of her belief in it, which is why it works so well as a weapon against Akhaten. I honestly think Clara's speech during this scene is better than the Doctor's, because there's so much more meaning to it. The leaf is not just a representation of her past, it's a reminder of the loss of her mother. Losing a parent at just 16 means there are so many unlived days and experiences. All these things they could have done as a family were taken because of Ellie's untimely death. It's a defining moment for Clara as a character, using that established butterfly effect backstory to defeat Akhaten because of the infinite potential it represents. The Doctor failed not just because of a lack of sentimentality, but because he focused on things that had already happened, instead of all the limitless things that could have happened. It's the ideal climax for the story, and it always chokes me up. I know it's a bit fantastical and not exactly traditional science fiction, but when has that ever stopped Doctor Who before? This leaf speech and climax is such an emotional moment, and it ends the episode on a really meaningful high. Although I just wonder what happens to the asteroid civilizations now that they've lost the planet they were orbiting. You know, best not think about that. After saving an entire star system, the Doctor takes Clara back home, where she confronts him for being at her mum's grave all those years ago. I do love how she calls him out on this sudden new memory. It adds some consequence to the Doctor's obsession regarding her. He's determined to find out exactly who Clara Oswald is and why she's so impossible. So he basically time-stalked her through her life and followed the entire story of her parents' meeting and watched her growing up. It was a great sequence to begin the episode with, and it worked as a good framing device, providing Clara with a lot of backstory, whilst also showing how the Doctor only sees her as a puzzle box, a mystery to solve. This is an episode that humanises Clara and builds her up as an individual. It provides her with a sympathetic and relatable backstory that allows her to earn her companion wings extremely effectively. The narrative is almost designed to strip away the mystery of the Impossible Girl and show that Clara is just like any other companion. She is genuinely just a normal woman. She experienced life, death, wonder and ambition in the same way as any of us, and I think that's what a lot of people get wrong about Clara, because like the Doctor, they look right through her and see her as just a mystery or a story arc, rather than an individual.
She's not possible.
The Impossible Girl is not a flaw with Clara's character, it's a flaw with the Doctor's, because he sees her as a thing. I think it's fantastic how this episode goes out of its way to highlight that, and explore the personal effects of such a lopsided relationship, showing how Clara refuses to be treated differently or viewed as someone she isn't, because that's unfair. It's understandable that the Doctor sees the other two Claras in her, but she is her own person, not the idea the Doctor has in his head after the previous encounters. She's not the Impossible Girl, she's just Clara Oswald.
If you want me to travel with you, that's fine. But as me.
Despite fans pretty much hating the Rings of Akhaten, it's honestly an excellent first adventure for Clara Oswald, and it's actually one of Jenna Coleman's favourites of Series 7B because it starts off her story so well. The focus on the characterisation of Clara is handled exceptionally. She's written incredibly and gets so much good material to work with, balancing both the fun nature of a companion's first outing, along with lots of valuable backstory. Her bond with the Queen of Years is the ideal way to communicate her character traits and show who she is as an individual, and Clara's role in the climax of the narrative is truly perfect. A lot of people tend to criticise how simple and low-key the story is, but that's kind of the point. There's an emotional core to the narrative which makes the simplicity so effective and powerful. It doesn't overcomplicate itself and instead tells a very sweet and genuine story about sentimentality and the power of memories. As an episode, The Rings of Akhaten delivers a lot of spectacle, with vibrant alien life and impressive sci-fi visuals, creating a living, breathing world and reminding you of the size of the Doctor universe. There's such a great scope to it, building up to this huge climactic battle of ancient alien gods. So it feels well paced and reminds you of how unique Doctor Who is as a show, able to pull off these kinds of tales without even breaking a sweat. I would award The Rings of Akhaten an A ranking on the Series 7B tier list. I don't care what anyone thinks. It's a very special and lovingly quaint episode. Something so heartwarming you can't help but enjoy it. It's chock full of wonderful speeches by Matt Smith and Jenna Coleman, who both put in brilliant performances throughout to amplify all the important character moments, fleshing out the Doctor and Clara as both a duo and as individual people. The soundtrack absolutely slaps, and the episode manages to continue the forward momentum of the Bells of St. John, building upon all the character moments in that previous episode and pushing the major storylines forward in a strong way. It's just a bit of a shame about what came next. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, and all my gold level patrons Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Franz Horn aka Line Vortex, Herna Verzog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.